Oh, okay, fabulous. We're recording. Marvelous. Okay, right. Well, thank you for all joining me, these wonderful learning-based individuals that we have. So for those of you that aren't entirely aware what a GPS is, I'm just going to clarify. So basically what a GPS is it's a way for you to plan absolutely anything on one page. So it's like a business plan on one page, okay? And it actually can be done for absolutely anything. Obviously, most of us on here, if not all of us on here, are in real estate. We're estate agents, so usually you would use the tool to help you with your business, but actually you can have several GPSs, and it could be to help you towards a specific goal for your health. It could be a specific goal for anything really personal at all. But in this instance, because we're all estate agents or wanting to become one, then obviously we're going to focus on this as a business tool. So the first thing I want you to just make a few notes on this morning, not this morning, this afternoon, before we start piecing it together, is just ask yourself, what is working today in this market? What feels like you're getting traction? What feels like it's working for you? So just have a little think on that. Just jot down a couple of things that you definitely want to include because you feel like right now it's working. So for example, if you've sold 2 properties this week, how did you do that? If you've got 2 listings that have come on this week, how did you get those? So what is working? So just make sure you jot those things down. And we're just going to basically create a plan to make sure that you achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve next year. So the GPS is for us to put a plan together on priorities and strategies, and then you actually utilize the 411, which is what we're going to talk about probably more on Monday with the goal setting to the now. The 411 is used in order to be on target with that plan. So today we're building the plan. On Monday, when we do goal setting to the now, we'll dig into the 411, and that's when obviously you can actually time block accordingly and make sure that you're tracking to be on target to that plan. Remembering, of course, that time blocking is what matters most. So it's really important that you are also on Monday's session as well. So everything that you do should be prioritizing your actions using the focusing question. So there's an amazing book called The One Thing, written by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. And the focusing question is, what is the one thing I can do, such by doing it, it makes everything easier or unnecessary? Okay, so every time you sit down and you focus on, what do I need to be doing this week? What's the one thing? Okay, a GPS is not a to-do list. Be really clear on that. It's not a to-do list, it's a priority list. So what's the one thing I need to get done today that's going to make everything else easier or unnecessary? Okay, so the first thing is the goal has to be measurable. Whatever it is that you want to achieve next year, there's got to be a measure next to it, not just I want to get known in my area. That's too generic. There's nothing we can measure against. So it might be something along the lines of, I want to have X amount of listings, which will generate me X amount of income, and therefore it would need to be an average fee of X. Okay, so there needs to be a number against it, and then that's how we'll fix the priorities. So I'm going to show you one I prepared earlier, because I think that's probably a lot easier rather than me just talking at you. So let me just show you what I mean. Okay. Can you see a new GPS in front of you now where it's filled in? Excellent. Okay, so this is an agent example that I prepared earlier today. So, for example, your one thing for the year is to sell X amount of properties at an average price of Y, which would equal Z GCI. So that would be that's my plan for next year. That's what I want to achieve. How am I going to do that? I've put 4 priorities in here. That doesn't mean you have to do 4 priorities, but what you need to decide is, how do I think I'm going to hit that? What is it I need to do personally? Okay, so let's talk through this. So the first one would be, okay, so if I'm going to achieve the X amount of listings, how am I going to do that? Calls to your sphere, targeting on the market properties, targeting withdrawn properties, some instant valuation leads through KW Grow, Door knocking, social media. That's why I'm asking you to think about, what am I doing well that I need to do more of? What am I not doing that if I started doing, it could dramatically change the business? Think about where your business has come from this year, where it's come from in the past, how you've managed to connect with people, and make sure that is in these strategies, of course. But that's what I want you to do. Think about, if I'm going to get that number of listings, where would I need to go? What would I need to do to make that happen? Priority 2, growth. What's my growth plan? Where am I lacking? What don't I understand? What do I need to be better at? So attend power-ups and any KW training sessions that are being put on. Read the MREA, the One Thing, the 12-week year, Selling in a Crisis, these sorts of books that are really going to help you to get focused on what you need to do to make this work. Hire an assistant or a VA, that will help you because you'll have more time free to be able to lead generate more. Master nurture workflows, or use a content writer to help you if you're not very good at creating that content. But what is it that you need to do to get better at certain things? Remember, this is about, if you want to grow in your business, it's about leverage. It's leveraging tech. It's leveraging people. It's leveraging systems. Do you have processes in place? Do you have a system that can be automating a lot of the things that you do? What do you need to do? How do you need to learn? And the main thing here, show up for accountability calls. If somebody is prepared to call you once a week, once a fortnight, whatever it is that you want, 10 minutes on the phone, it doesn't need to be an hour, 10 minutes on the phone. How did you get on against your plan? What is it you wanted to get done this week? How have you got on against that? What's getting in the way? What do you need to do this week in order to make sure it happens? Accountability is the key to this entirely. Okay, maybe a third priority might be buyer representation. Daniel, I just saw you say in the group there, who's got a buyer agency contract. If you were to represent buyers and charge a fee for doing that as well, you're going to double your business overnight. However many sales you did this year, if you represented buyers also at the same volume, you do double the amount without working any harder. It's about working smarter. So if you're going to represent buyers, what does that look like? Again, calls to Sphere. You'll notice there'll be a couple of things, by the way, that overlap. By making those calls, it can help you to more than one priority. But calls to Sphere, open houses that you have on your listings, run first-time buyer classes. Door knocking, again, another overlap. You could do a Facebook Live or a face-to-face community centre opportunity, property clinics for first-time buyers, or for people wanting support to help to purchase in this market. Another priority might be you just want to become the go-to person for everything property in your community. Well, how would you do that? Well, that's going to be being active on the Facebook groups, making sure people know who you are, offering to help, offering to support, be part of that community. You could join the Residents Association. Again, door knocking, that's how people are going to know who you are in the community, offering, again, to keep them up to date with what's happening with property values. You know, send out a community newsletter that's just centered on that particular area, because you're part of it. You live in that community yourself. You monitor these things all the time. You're just sharing what you know to keep them up to date with what's happening. Handwritten note, leaflets through doors, local sponsorships like schools, or being part of the food banks. I know you do that, Emma. Local business connections, you could create a directory. There's lots of different ways, but and this is where I've gone wrong many times on this. You're learning from my mistakes. This has to be in priority order. So priority number 1, if that's all you managed to do next year and you didn't get to priority 2, 3, or 4, are you happy with that? Is that your number 1 priority? If your number 1 priority isn't this, and it's this, then this needs to be priority 1, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's making sure that, yes, you need 3, it's usually 3 priorities, but it can be 4, it can be 2, it could even be 1, right? If you just say, if I just focus on that, if I only did that, it will give me the results, but it must be in that priority order. For me, this growth piece is vital. Is absolutely vital. We can never assume we know it all already. And I don't care how many years of experience you might have, there's always more to learn. And also, it's not just about more to learn. It's also life is, when you're running a business, life gets ridiculously busy. You've got to make peace with the fact you are never going to get it all done. You're unlikely to have a clear inbox every single day and you've gone, do you know what, smashed it, got nothing to do. That doesn't happen when you run your own business. There's always things you can be doing. So often we can drop the ball in certain areas. We might have got some great results from something over here. We've got really busy. We've kind of exhausted that and then, you know, got back into lead gen, but not gone back to the one thing that actually gave us the results, just because we're busy and we're just kind of, I don't know, just reacting rather than being focused and being clear on the actions that we need to take. That's where accountability comes in. That's where, you know, training sessions come in, because you hear it again, you go, oh crap, why did I stop doing that? Why did I stop doing that? That was working for me so well, right? So when you time block the activities, look at the calendars, look at the training calendars, what's coming up where you go, do you know what, I need to be on that, or I need to revisit that again. You might have sat Ignite 3 years ago, doesn't mean you don't need to hear it again, doesn't mean you don't need to go back to basics again, especially in a market like this. In a market like this, we've got to get back to basics, and we've got to be doing, you know, the fundamentals really well and consistently. So yeah, just making sure that whatever is in priority 1 there, if that's all you got to next year, it's going to give you the results that you want. Okay. And also, just to be clear, obviously I've put 4 different priorities in here just to give you a rough idea. And I've put 5 or 6 strategies in each. It doesn't really matter if it's just one strategy. You know, this is about committing to mastery, to become, that's the one thing, that's the thing that always drives me business. If I just do that, I know I'm going to achieve what I want to next year. So don't look at this and go, I've got to do all that. That's not what we're saying here. I'm just giving you ideas. Okay. And only you know, for your demographic, for your area, where you live, what might be the best strategy. Okay. Because you know your area well, and you know what's working for you. What I'm also going to do for you all is I'm going to share with you a list of about 25 different lead generation ideas that would cover off all of these priorities. I'll send that out to you so that you can look through it and go, do you know what? I used to do that. I've stopped doing it. And I know that worked really well. It might trigger something in you that helps you to work out what your best strategies are. The other thing I want to say as well, I talk a lot about pushing yourself and aiming really high. And that's really important. It is. But equally, it shouldn't be something that is completely unachievable. It shouldn't be pie in the sky, for example. It's important that we push ourselves beyond what we achieved last year, or maybe beyond what we think is possible. But what tends to happen is most agents maybe overestimate what they can achieve in their first year, but they severely underestimate what they can do in 5. I mean, I don't know if anybody wants to jump in on this, anybody that's been with us for more than a couple of years that can give us their own take on this. But I mean, I can name a couple straight away who are probably sitting on this call right now thinking, I never believed I would be where I am right now. Does anybody want to share? No? Too shy? Should I just keep talking? You just like the sound of my voice?
Sorry, Claire, as I was about to say something, my son walked in the room and started saying about football training tonight. Sorry.
Oh,
so
okay.
Sorry, did you want me to say something about?
I mean, I would, Dan, actually, I was thinking of you. I do want you to sort of share your experience, because you've just gone into your 3rd year with us, right? And this is your 3rd year that you've capped. So it'd be really good if you can kind of share how you felt at the beginning as to what you thought might be possible, and then look at where you are now. That would be amazing if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Okay, so I didn't have any preconceptions with regards to what I was going to do in my first year. I didn't really have a plan. Really my plan was that when I launched my business was to speak to everybody on my phone, just to make sure that everyone knew what I was doing now, and that was it. And to be fair, from that probably bought me about 6 bits of business to be getting on with. Don't get me wrong, I was here, there, and everywhere, so I wasn't sort of hyper local.
Yeah.
But it got me some income, some quick wins, and then really from there it was just to try and get my name out in the community. So sponsoring a local school, which was great. I still don't even think I'm anywhere near. You know, I think if you asked 100 people in my local high street, you know, name 3 estate agents, I wouldn't be. Well, I still wouldn't even be mentioned. Maybe a couple of people might. So it's still a question of, you know, carrying on with the community, you know, still doing my daily calls. You know, I've always got a priority list. I probably haven't got it as laid out as this. Yeah, there's plenty of bumps in the road. I'm really sort of trying to now move my business forward, so I'm not doing absolutely everything. So I'm, you know, 2 and a bit years in, I'm probably run ragged, still working 6-7 days a week. So I need to really get my business together where I can. So my interestingly enough, so I'm actually looking at next year thinking if I can do the same as what I did this year, because I think this year was a strong market. If I can do the same, then actually I think that's a step forward. And probably one of my priorities next year is to do at least one let a month.
Okay.
So I think, you know, in the type of market we're in or we're going into, we need to be a little, you know, we need to diversify. We can't just totally rely on sales.
Agreed. I mean, would you say it's maybe it was slightly different for you, because I saw your growth really quite quickly, but I think what we find with most agents is that year 1 and year 2 can be quite similar with what people achieve, and a lot of agents tend to quit before the year 2 mark. But it's usually just after year 2 when everything kind of just starts to roll. Everything that you've put in place, all the relationships that you've built over that time, it kind of starts to pay off a little bit. Are you finding that?
Yeah, I would say that probably. So yeah, you know, even though I had a good year 1, I can't think the ins and outs of the figures, but yeah, I would say that I've probably done maybe 18, 19 completions in year 1. And this year it's sort of moving towards nearly 30 or around about 30. But probably 8 or 9 of those came from recommendations from my first lot. So I think I'm now thinking, well, the more I sell and the more I do, hopefully those people want to recommend me, you know.
Well, that's it. That's exactly what happens, because, you know, you make more connections with people, you sell more, they tell more, and it just rolls from there. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people, you know, get to that point. 90% of people give up before year 2 because it's hard. This is hard, right? There's not a button that you press that suddenly like that's it, I've nailed it, everything's working. It's just being consistent. And one of the consistent things that you've done, Dan, is you've always called 6 people every day, haven't you? That's your thing.
Yeah, always, and probably, you know, and I sort of I've been inconsistent with door knocking. That's been really, really good for me. But I've been inconsistent with it. But yeah, so you know, I'm going into next year where I've not got a particularly good pipeline. Pipeline's sort of quite light, but I've probably got 30 people to run at. I mean, no one's committed to selling with me next year yet, but I've probably got about 30 people to run at that I've spoken to that know that they're expecting a call from me week 1, week 2 of January with a view to hopefully selling sometime next year. Even I've bumped into someone today as I was putting some post in the post box, and she was chatting to my wife, and I said, "Oh, anyone that you know is thinking of selling in the next next year?" I gave her my card, and then my wife said, "Yeah, she was on the market with another agent about 2 months ago, and I've been touting that, but I didn't know it was her." So I said, "Well, look, when you come back to market, you've got to use me. Why did you use Elliot James in the first place?"
Mm.
So yeah, just getting out and having conversations.
Well, look, you've just given yourself one action right there that you would need to do next year, right? So you've consistently from day one made 6 calls every day, right? And remember, this is about building habits. For everybody that's listening in to this conversation, this is about building habits, and you mustn't overcommit. Like if Dan had said, I'm going to call 15 people every day, he probably would have got a month in and then gone, oh, sod this, I can't keep this up, it's too much, and he just would have stopped, right? But because he said, I'm just going to do 6, he managed to stick to it. Come what may, he made those 6 calls. And that if that's all he did that day, he knew he'd done what he needed to do. And as a result of that, his business has consistently grown over time. Now what you've said, Dan, is that you haven't consistently door knocked, and yet you've had really good results from door knocking. So perhaps next year you factor in, I'm going to knock 2 doors a day. It doesn't have to be 50 every Wednesday or something like that. It can just, or it could be, if you wanted, every Tuesday afternoon, I'm going to go out and I'm just going to knock doors. Well, however it works for you, but build the habit of making sure that you do it and it's not inconsistent, because the results that you've had from it speak for themselves. So that's why it's really important to look back at any little wins that you've had. And by the way, I don't mean necessarily wins where you've sold someone's house, wins where you've connected really well, wins where it started a conversation, wins where they've given you their name, number and email address and they were happy to do so. Because it's all about database growth, remember. All of these activities that are on here should help you to connect with more people, to get more names, numbers and email addresses. And provided you've mastered nurture, which is one of those on the growth, then you're consistently in touch with them through the systems that we provide you. Okay, so think about, what do you do well? You know, even if you're not an agent right now, but you're thinking about being an agent, or you've just started and you don't know where to begin. If you're a great worker, you get on really well when you speak to people face to face, continue to do that. Just talk about what it is that you're doing now. Exactly what Dan said. He made sure he told everybody, this is what I'm doing now. Okay. For you, Dan, and somebody, sorry, go on.
Sorry, can I just ask that, when you said that Dan made 6 calls every day,
Mhm.
so were those 6 calls then fed into nurture every day as well, or was it just calls and having those conversations? That's it.
So what did you do, Dan? I mean, my advice would be every single person that's in your phone should be downloaded and in nurture. And then, yes, you should call 6 of those people a day. You should update your notes, and then you should schedule the next call for when you want to call them, or they would go into a 36 touch campaign where they're getting emails and text messages, and you're going to get reminded naturally when it's time to make another call, depending on how the conversation went. That's how it should be. Dan, I don't think Dan's been using nurture as he needed to.
No, I haven't. I haven't got my camera on, but I'm old. So I'm sort of, I load people on my mobile phone as their name, as the first. So where their first name is their full name, and on their surname it's the property address. So for argument's sake, I might type in number 1. It brings up everyone that's got a 1 in their address, and I just pick some people to call that day that maybe I haven't sort of spoken to. Also, I've started to use broadcast lists as well, which is I'm starting to get some traction with regards to that now.
We're also getting set up, aren't we, Dan, on nurture as well, so that the nurture workflows can work for you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that alone, Dan, if what you would want to do is do the same amount of business that you did last year, this year, if all you did was factor in regular door knocking and now you've got nurture working, you won't just match it, you'll double it. I guarantee you. And everybody's heard me say that. When we jump on and do this next year, we can ask Dan the question, because provided you've got nurture set up and they're having that regular contact, and you've been door knocking as well, you're going to absolutely smash it. What you need to be thinking about already is who's going to be doing your sales progression and making sure you've got the leverage in the business so you're not running around like a crazy person. So, okay. So as I mentioned, the 411 that we will cover off on Monday is how do you put numbers behind this? How do you put a specific target on what it is that you're going to do? And how do you put that into a document that means that this is exactly what I need to do today? And really dig deep on that. What I don't want to do is overwhelm you by going into all of that now as well until you've nailed this part. So I don't know if you want to spend 10, 15, 20 minutes now. If I share my screen with you as well, I presume you've taken a few notes. If I take us off of this a moment, and I'm going to share another GPS, sorry, that has got a lot of different lead gen ideas on it. And you can make some notes of ones that you think, oh, I did that before, or oh, I hadn't thought of that. You can ask any questions about it as well, just to see if this might help you in any way. Can you see this one? You see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to shut up for a little while and give you 10 minutes to just kind of glance down this and then move on to the others in a minute. But I'm just going to give you a chance to have a little look at that. Think about what you're doing already, what you think you should be doing. Make notes on some of the things that you might want to add into your own GPS, because we really have to nail that one thing, those priorities and the strategies before we move on to the 411. So I'm just going to leave that on my screen for a little while and give you some time to read it through and make your notes. Am I okay to move the screen, or are you still working on what's there? I'll move forward a bit.
Yeah.
Just leave that on there and just, can you hear me? Did I unmute? I'm unmuted.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Any questions, feel free to ask away. But once you've got some ideas of the strategies that you would implement to win this sort of business, what I'd then like you to do, not now, but obviously between now and Monday, is I would like it if you could start to be quite specific with numbers. Now, for example, Emma, I know that you get, and Joe would get a fair amount of business through BNI. So if you got, I don't know, 4 or 5 listings from BNI last year, you know, and you'd like to double that next year, then I'd like you to specifically write BNI is one of my strategies, and then put a number next to it, 10. You want to get 10 listings, like in that priority one that I had at the top, which was about listings. If BNI is one of those strategies, write 10 next to it. I expect to get 10 listings through BNI next year, for example. If it's tennis club, I know Tom Page, one of our agents, most of his business, and he's in a really affluent area, most of his business has come through his connections at the tennis club. Josh Smith, it comes from his connections at the, excuse the dog, somebody's just knocked at the door. It comes from his connections at the rugby club. Bear with me just a second. Sorry, I will be 1 moment. Sorry. So yeah, it's right. Start to write some numbers next to how many listings do I expect to get from that particular lead source? Door knocking. If I go door knocking, if last year I got, I don't know, 5 from it, I want to double that. Again, write it down. Put a number next to that strategy. How many listings do you expect to get from it? How many buyer agency contracts do you expect to get or do you want to get? Once we've done that, this is called a sprint GPS, right? A sprint GPS is how do we make that goal happen that I'd like to happen by the end of next year? Instead of me achieving it in 12 months, how do we make it happen in 12 weeks? And that's when we start an accountability group. Every single week, we join it. You do a 66-day challenge of building out those habits to get there faster. Okay, but it starts with you creating your own GPS. And what I don't want to do is bombard you with and this, and then you do this, and then you do that. And it's like, hang on a minute, I haven't even started the first thing yet. Okay, so I'm not going to do too much more than that today. I'm going to go back to the agent example here, share my screen with you. Hopefully I'm on the right one. So you can see here, priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, and priority 4. You decide what are the best strategies for my area, what I want to achieve, and I want to see some numbers next to each one. How many listings do I expect to get through calling through my sphere? How many do I expect to get from door knocking? How many do I expect to get from targeting withdrawn properties? How many do I expect to get from targeting on the market properties? We can then talk about how you would do that. What lead gen strategy would you have for those on the market properties? So is it door knocking? Is it handwritten notes? Is it creating videos for that specific vendor, sharing your screen, showing them their own listing and talking them through changes that you would make in order to attract more buyers to it? Put that on a QR code and put it on a nice handwritten note and through their door. What would your process be to targeting those particular types of properties? So you need to be really clear. What are the strategies I'm going to implement to go and get those listings? How many listings do I expect to get from that particular strategy? And what does the process to that look like? Okay, so really give this some thought between now and Monday. Then think about as well, what don't I have in place that can support me? So this would be great, but I'm not using Nurture right now, and I've got nothing automated. I've got no marketing going out. I've got no database. I've got nothing that I can be staying in touch with to make this happen. And then that's when we need to know where we can support you in those things. Okay, so you need to be clear on what support you need as well. Any questions so far with all this? Has anybody ever seen anything like this before? Has anybody ever planned something in this way before?
No, I haven't planned before like this. Sorry. This is the
Yeah.
first time I'm seeing all this.
Okay, and am I making sense with what I'm saying? Have I gone too fast? Is it clear?
No, it is making sense that if you had, it's kind of how many numbers you need to achieve the target, what you need to and what things you need to do.
Well, exactly. And this is going to be different for everybody because it depends what your goals are, right? We've got some people that are in this business right now and they want to build an empire. They're working 6-7 days a week. They want to build a team of 10 people. They want to get to a point where they're working on the business, not in it, and they need to go hard and fast. And then we've got other people, it's a sideline business. They're quite happy selling one property a month, earning, 80 grand a year from it or something. And that's their goal. That's all they really want to do. So I can't do this part for you because one, it depends on where you live and the demographic and what works in that area. You need to know and understand the demographic of where you live, of course. It could be that you're in quite a sort of young area where social media would be, the main source of lead gen. Or you might have an area where actually there's people that are sort of more middle-aged and above, in which case social media, you know, is good as a sort of touch point. They might kind of notice your branding, but actually it's not the way to connect with people. Connecting people would be by sponsoring the local schools and by being part of the clubs and by offering support to the community, or creating a directory of local businesses and speaking to all the local businesses, creating your own sort of networking group that way. So you have to be aware of what, you know, what your audience would want in your area, and then decide on what your strategy is. And then by implementing those strategies, how many listings do you expect to get from that? Or how many buyer opportunities to represent a buyer do you expect to get that? Just from putting one listing on the market, potentially having 10 people view it, not only one person can buy it, 9 people are still looking for a property. You could potentially represent all 9 of those. So do you need to study that more? Should that be in your growth? Do you need to understand what your pitch would be to a buyer? Do you need to understand how to represent a buyer in the best possible way? What is your value proposition as a buyer agent? Why should somebody pay you to support them in securing their next property? In fact, David Smith, I'm going to come to you on that, because you obviously do sort of deal making, property sourcing type things. So that's something that's not alien to you, is it? Helping people to purchase?
No, not at all. I mean, I source people, and I see myself as like a property fix-it man. So each individual person is completely different. Well, you'll probably know that it's every single property has its own different constraints and things that are, you know, going on. But I always like start with the end. So I listen to what's going on with that. With that person, and then I come up with a strategy that would suit them or everybody's mutual beneficial. So I'm in a kind of, I like to see everybody happy. So I start at the end. I say, what do I think would be the best outcome for everybody? And then I work back from there. Brilliant,
absolutely brilliant. And look, and I guess, how do you promote yourself in that way though? So if I was a first-time buyer or somebody that keeps losing out on property and, you know, is a bit disheartened, how would I find someone like you, and what would your pitch almost be to me? I hate pitches because, as you say, it's not a one size fits all, but what would your generic, what do you want to get across to that person so that they know you can help them?
Generically, I would show them. It's like I was dealing with a lady up in Glasgow, and I know nothing about Glasgow, but my sister lives in Glasgow. Now she wanted to buy a house, couldn't find any kind of deals, didn't know where to buy, didn't know how to sort of mortgage out. So it was just like listening to all those little things and taking notes. Needs a mortgage, okay, I'll put you in touch with them. You know, you need a house in that area. Why do you need a house in that area? Okay, tick those boxes. And then it's just sort of like building something. And then I just get a few bullet points, and I can literally just go into not any area, but using the tools and stuff that we've got, I can go into an area and just say, right, she needs that or he needs that, write those down, find the price, find the people, put them together, give them a little pack. And it usually takes me about an hour to put something together because I've got it all templated. And then I just fire that off and see what happens, really. And then maybe do the same thing as Daniel does. I was writing down Daniel's what he does, and I keep forgetting that nurture thing afterwards. You know, I've done it. I've laid down, you know, the foundations and stuff, and I've walked away and gone and done something else. And I think, oh, I should really go back. So I've actually put that in my calendar to go cold calling and do what Daniel does. And just, oh, how did it go? And, you know, that sort of thing, and just keep the conversation going.
I'm so glad you just mentioned that, because there's a very, very well-known saying that all of the successful people say, which is the fortune is in the follow-up. So, you know, you've done all of that work to make that connection. You've had the conversation, you've presented something to them, and then you've left it. But it's very rare that someone's going to say right there and then, oh, that's perfect, yes, please. People go away, they think about it, they ask other people, they talk to their partner, you know, and time lapses. So you have to do that consistent follow-up, you know, and otherwise you, like, if the very first conversation you and I had, for example, would you be on this call now if we hadn't continued talking?
Oh, no, not at all. No, yes, it's been great listening to your perspective and Keller Williams. We're also chatting to Steve Johnson, who's at Keller Williams, and plus a couple of people that it's weird that I've referred people onto Keller Williams and I've not actually done it myself. It's really odd. But yeah, I mean, not at all. I wouldn't be standing here today.
Exactly. And that's the important thing. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because funnily enough, That's not in any of these, is it? Where does it say? It says calls to Sphere, yes, but where does it say follow-up calls?
Yeah.
It doesn't actually say that in there. So that's a really good point that you make, that absolutely should be in
Yeah.
your GPS.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I must admit, I think the follow-up, the one thing I never really concentrate on is a sale. One thing, I'm not trying to sell to anybody. I'm obviously trying to make a bit of money, obviously, and I'm a year into my journey, so this is quite, it's new. I mean, I've done stuff before with my dad, but this is quite new for me to actually make this into a business. But I always keep things quite jovial. I mean, I've got, my social channels, and I dick about online. I do lots of lives, and I'm just constantly pissing about. I mean,
Yeah.
putting it mildly, I'm not kind of like walk in there with like, I've got my suit on, right, let's make a sale. I don't do that.
Yeah.
But one thing about the follow-up I find with that is that, I talk to people about, how's your mum and what's going on in your life. All these little touch points about something personal to them. And as long as you remember those things, you go back to them, a conversation kind of like, it just grows in a more natural way, rather than, firing a load of numbers at someone saying, here's a great deal.
Oh,
And
100%.
that's great, David, because with Nurture as well, you could put those notes in there, and you might not speak to them necessarily, physically speak to them for, say, 6 months or a year, but those notes are in there, and you will remember that soft touch, that those soft facts about them, that they'll be really impressed that you've remembered them. And then Nurture can nurture them with like emails and things like that, just to keep them up to date with various things that are happening within your area or within the area that you found that buyer. So that's why it's so important to have information in Nurture. I will speak to you afterwards, David, on that.
I mean, I'd say that because that's one thing that actually worked with me with a couple of people. Like, you get sales call after sales call after sales call, but there was this one guy that hit me up on LinkedIn, and he'd basically gone onto my website, and he'd taken down a few notes, and then he had it all written down on a pad and stuff. And it's, I can see you're an exit plan and do the. And he put a little heart at the bottom of the kiss. And if you want to do some business, give me a shout. And I've actually used him to do some stuff for me on Fiverr, because he was the one that stuck in my head. Whether he was good or not, I don't know. I kind of went onto his site and that, and checked him out on Fiverr and bits and pieces. Did all my DD, but at that point, he was it was about 25 people that all pitched for this job that I needed doing on Fiverr, and he was the only one that stuck in my head because of this little video that he did. He'd hunted me out. He made the effort. So to me, that was a bit more personal.
100%. I think I've told this story before as well, when I was searching for a car for my daughter. And I went on to like Auto Trader. I found like 6 of very, very similar cars, similar mileage, and just clicked the button for more information. I think out of the 6, 4 of them just sent me a screenshot of the exact same thing that I'd already seen. So there was no additional information at all. Another one rang me like 25 times, and I was on a Zoom or whatever, and I couldn't pick up. And the other one sent me an email with a personalized video embedded in it. And when I clicked on it, it was like, hi, Claire, you inquired about the car just behind me here. I just wanted to show you around it really quickly. If you want to make an appointment to come in and have a look at it, let me know. This is my number. And I was like, that's the guy I'm ringing back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he'd gone out of his way to show me what it was I'd inquired about, and it said, hi, Claire. It was personal.
Yeah.
Right. And that was it. So it's just, that's what we always have to remember, is it's making connections with people. Everything starts with a conversation. So really and truly, all of these different strategies in here are really, how do I connect with people? How do I get more connections? Where do I need to go, and where do I need to be in order to meet people, to make a connection and get their contact number and get their email address, so that I can then nurture them over a period of time. So that some of us are brilliant at networking, walk in a room and feel really comfortable. Other people are like, I hate it, like I just really can't do that. But I'm happy to be on my phone. I'm happy to do social media. I don't mind knocking on a door. Other people are like, oh my God, no, I can't knock on a door. It makes me really uncomfortable. And that's okay. There's no right or wrong, but it's what's the biggest. And look, you've got to get uncomfortable though, guys. Like, there's no point me standing here saying, don't worry, just do what you like. If you continue to do what you've always done, you'll have what you'll always have. Okay, just remember that. So you are, at some stage, you're going to have to step out your comfort zone and do something you don't really want to do. Okay, but that doesn't mean you put yourself in a position where you are so unbelievably uncomfortable that you make the person you're speaking to feel very uncomfortable as well. Okay, so that's what script practice is for, which is what this growth area is for. If there's something that you really, really need to be better at, that should be in your calendar. That should be time blocked in. If it's role play, if it's, as I said, reading books, understanding your market, tracking your numbers, all of this sort of thing makes you better at your job, which builds your confidence, which will get you out on the road door knocking and doing other things. So that's why for me that is priority too. Might not be for someone else. So I'm hoping that this, I've given you some understanding. I know I blocked 2 hours out for this, but I'm really mindful of whizzing through this. Nobody's really got their head around exactly what they want their own strategy to be, and then we start whizzing on to trying to time block it into our calendars. So I think it's probably better left at this. Would you agree, Mel? And then
Yeah,
Monday we go
definitely.
into the time blocking bit afterwards.
Yeah,
And-
definitely.
Any more questions on this? So the sprint part of it, by the way, is right. Well, these are the numbers that I want to do if I'm going to double, triple my business from last year, or, you know, this is ideally, I'd like to achieve this by the end of the year, but if I can do it in first quarter, even better. That's when we start to time block and chunk the time out to do certain things. So we will get to that point. But does anybody have any questions on how you fill this out and understanding it really well?
Claire, can I just ask, what time is it on Monday?
Monday is 9 until 11. Let me just double check.
Yeah, that's goal setting, isn't it, for the now?
Yeah, it's called goal
Okay.
setting to the now. It's 9 until 11.
Thank you.
What market centre are you with, Rebecca?
I'm Exceed.
Exceed, right? Okay, so what we'll do, Mel, can you make sure that you put the link to it in the leadership group chat so that all the market centres can see it if they want their agents to jump on as well?
Yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you. It's been
fantastic.
really helpful.
No, good. I'm glad. I'm really glad. I tend to have a habit of giving too much information in one session usually, and then everyone's a bit like baffled by it. So I think I'm probably right to leave it there. But if anybody has any more questions on anything that's here, any other ideas, if anyone wants to share something that's worked really well that I haven't put in here, that would be really good as well.
The only thing I would say that if I didn't have a follow-up system, I wouldn't have a business. That's it. And I would say that something that's worked quite well is after evaluation or an inspection appointment is to WhatsApp them a nice little video message just saying, look, it was great to meet you. You know, obviously these are the figures. I'll give you a follow-up call tomorrow. If you've got anything else to, you know, just let me know. That's standing out as being someone different.
100%, absolutely. I mean, I've been doing a lot of video messages, voice noting, you know, things like that, personal. It doesn't take a minute, but it helps to increase that connection with somebody. And as we know, high street estate agents don't have the time, and they won't be thinking to do it. They'll be going to the next valuation and the next valuation, and they won't be putting that time and effort in. And I also would absolutely stress dropping off a pre-listing pack or some kind of information before you do the valuation. You know, if you've booked in to go and see them on, where are we, Thursday, if you booked in to go and see them on Monday, Sunday I'd go out for a walk, I'd just drop through their door and just say, you know, or I'd even knock on the door and just say, hi, really sorry to bother you, I just want to make sure you had this before my visit at 2 o'clock tomorrow. Undoubtedly you'll have some questions about it, so I just thought I'd drop it off now so you've got some time to have a look through it, and we'll cover them off when I see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. See you later. You know, no other estate agent is going to do that. They're not, because they haven't got the time. So
I was just going to
already,
say,
so go on.
follow up after watching your joining your call yesterday, watching that video about follow up. As you know, I'm not really an agent as yet, but I did value a house probably, I don't know, 6 months ago. This guy asked me, I've sold for him before, but followed him up and then it went really quiet and not heard anything from him. So I thought, oh, I'm just going to WhatsApp him with a Christmas card. And so I did, not really expecting to get a reply because I've been ignored for the last however. Anyway, he replied saying, oh yeah, have a great Christmas too, and we'll be in touch early in the new year to list our house.
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
I just like,
Absolutely
oh.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. But there's people that wouldn't have been on that Power Up actually. Do you think it would be a good thing for me to share that video again for people to see it?
It was brilliant, yeah.
All right. Well, seeing as we've got a bit more time, I'm going to do that. Mel, you carry on chatting. Let me see if I can find it.
I'm going to get off then, 'cause I've
Well,
Oh,
or
No,
just
that's
if,
okay.
if
No, no.
anybody else had something they wanted to ask, I just want to make sure I
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Right.
Obviously, with what Claire has shown you today, it'll be really important maybe to have a think over the weekend and make a plan. ready for the goal setting for the now that Danny's going to be doing on Monday, so that you can move on to the next stage of more in depth on how you're going to actually incorporate that into next year to hit your targets. We are happy to do accountability calls for anybody that wants an accountability call. So myself and Danny are happy to phone every week, and we'll ask just 4 simple questions so that we can just see what you're planning on doing this week, how you're going to get there. And then at the following week, we'll say, right, what did you do last week? How did you manage to succeed? Did you not succeed? Is something not working? Do we need to change something? So if anyone wants accountability calls, it doesn't necessarily have to be just KW Plus. It could be anybody. We're quite happy to do those accountability calls with you. Have you got everything ready for me, Claire?
I think so. Can you see the screen where it
I
says,
can.
Ryan, I'd like to invest money? Okay, good.
Yes.
Right. Let me turn this up. I need to unplug my earphones for this, otherwise it's going to smash my ears. Here we go.
Business and said he'd like to invest money into the New York City real estate market. Would I be able to help him? He would use real cash dollars and would need bank account help. And I totally replied, and absolutely, we take cash money dollars. How much are you looking to spend? And he was like, less than 10 million. I was like, boom, jackpot. This is New York City real estate. And I just sent him a bunch of listings because I didn't know. And he picked one at 45 West 67th Street, apartment 15 ABC. Make offer 8 million. And it was asking 8.5 million. And I was just like, holy mother of, $8 million offer. This is what it is. I am now the greatest real estate broker in the history of the world. I asked him to send me a proof of funds, and he sent me a DHL with like a photo of an accountant with a letter that legitimately said, Mr. X does not commit to things that he does not commit to. That was his proof of funds. And I was totally okay with it. And we negotiated this deal over the internet for $8.3 million. And then he disappeared off the face of the earth for like a month. And he had a contract, and I'd introduced him to an attorney. He just never replied ever again. But I followed up every day because this was my one big fish. No one else in their life had ever talked to me about spending that much money on an apartment. He eventually writes back like a month later, says, sorry, I've been a little busy. I'm like, okay, no problem. And he actually signs the contract. Then he has to send a deposit, and then the deposit never comes. And now I got the seller freaking out, other brokers going crazy, and like months go by. So we have the signed contract, and it doesn't mean anything. The attorneys tell me that what's basically happening is that this person takes a signed contract, and this happens all the time in New York City, and they shop it around the world. And they say, listen, this is this apartment. It's probably worth 10 million. I've got it for 8.3. Give me $20,000, come in on it with me. And they'll sell the contract over and over and over to unsuspecting victims, and they'll steal people's money. So it's a scam. And I think it was like 2 months go by. The attorney calls me and says, you're not going to believe this. I just got an $830,000 deposit from Bank of Atlantis. It's like, are we in contract? He's like, yeah, you're in contract. It's like, holy mother of God, $8.3 million for an apartment. I sold it over the internet. And then there's this thing in New York City called a board package. And he vanished off the face of the earth. Stopped responding to everything. Like 6 months. Now you've got different attorneys looking to sue everybody, but who do you go after? Right now, it's just about keeping that deposit and holding the deposit back. But I followed up. It's my whole life is follow up. I will follow up with you until the day that you die. I followed up non-stop because I looked him up initially, and I'd seen that like he might be attached to this house that looked expensive in Paris. And then I had some genius idea. And so I sent him this email that said, hey, I'll be in Paris tomorrow. If you want to meet, in person, we can go through the documents. And he wrote back in like 1 minute after 6 months of nothing and said, sure, 10 p.m. and gave me a location. And now I'm like, well, I used all the money I had, got an Aer Lingus flight through Dublin. Then I think I took Ryanair, which was super fitting for me, to Paris to try to find this magical person. 10 p.m. rolled by and the guy doesn't show up. I'm like crying in my baguette. I think it was like 1 a.m. because I had nowhere to go and I didn't plan on getting a hotel or anything. I just thought I'd like wing it, and then just go right back to the airport. And then 1 a.m. he shows up with like a line of people. So now I know he's real. And all he really cared about was getting me drunk. And he just wanted to watch me drink. I was the opposite of who he was in every way, shape, and form. And I drank a significant amount of tequila. And he like sort of looked at the papers a little bit. I got him to sign 2 things and I would just fill out the rest. So I took it as a win, went back to New York City, very sick. Then he had to come close and he disappeared off the face of the earth again. But at least now I knew that he was a real person. And then to make a long story short, he randomly one day, again, months later, says, I'm in New York City. I'd like to close. Like, are you crazy? It's like 11:30 a.m. You can't just get a closing together, right? Oh, but fine, we'll figure it out. Because they were trying to sue for deposits. It was crazy. It's like, where are you? Mandarin Oriental. went up there to wait for him, doesn't come down on time, finally comes down with like 15 people in this fleet of black Escalades, pulls up outside the Mandarin Oriental, completely tinted out and crazy. He signs the papers and he closes, and all he cares about is taking a selfie with me for his BBM profile. Turns out that he prints about $1 billion a month, wealthier than Gaddafi, and just wasn't concerned with this little apartment. And the only reason that he moved forward, because he thought it was super amusing to watch me consistently, persistently follow up. Right. And the fact that I actually went to Paris, and he knew it was bull, like he knew that I wasn't going to be in Paris, right, is one of the reasons he went through it. And since then, we've done like 300 million together, just as a way to diversify and move money around. And it didn't take money of mine. Going to Paris costs money, but other than that, following up with items of value, like staying on top of him, everything, every deal is a deal. You're just trying to see which salesperson is going to quit first.
I think that establishes that the most important thing that you do is follow up. Great video.
Claire, can you send me that?
Of course I will.
Thank
Of
you.
course I will. Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant video. And that, to be honest with you, is one of the just write that down because I know I will forget because I've got a bad memory. One of the things that I am terrible at is sticking with the follow-up. So I can see it in my own numbers, right? When I time block my calendar to follow up, you can see the difference in the numbers that month. And then if I go crazy and have far too many appointments the following month, but don't leave enough time to follow up, I don't do my numbers that I need to do. So it is all the fortune is in the follow-up. It is all about the follow-up. So yeah, it's a very good point that you made there, David, and that you clarified, Dan, and that Ryan's just clarified for us as well. So any other questions for anybody else, for me, or anything else anybody needs to understand before they can really get their GPS sorted for Monday? No? Okay, if you do have any, you're welcome to message me privately if you're unsure. But yeah, I'll get that video over to you, Dan, and I look forward to seeing you all on Monday.
Lovely.
See you, Claire.
Okay,
Thank you.
guys. See you all later.